we are just coming up on time. We've started the recording, so I think we'll go ahead and get started here in a second. While we wait for a few more people to roll in, wanted to just kind of set the stage a little bit and talk about kind of what we're doing, kind of what the goal is. So for those who don't know, my name is Ron Northcutt. I'm the head of DevRel at Appsmith. And what we wanted to do today was have kind of a roundtable discussion. Now, this is going to be at least partially, like maybe half of Joseph kind of sharing his knowledge. Now, I'll let Joseph introduce himself in a second, but what we want to do is two things. We want to kind of cover kind of from a freelance or a consulting perspective, some background on how you can use Appsmith, how people are using Appsmith to help advance their careers, help them solve problems for their clients and get the job done and get it done well. And I'm actually super excited. I had to kind of twist Joseph's arm a little bit on this because he does not like bragging about himself, but I'll do it for him. Joseph is an expert, right? Like he has been doing this for a very long time as a freelancer and a consultant. Robert and Jonathan, you may have actually come across Joseph from the AppSheets community. He made a really huge splash over there. He's been making a big splash with Appsmith. We were super fortunate to convince him to come actually join us instead of just being an amazing person in the community. So we're very excited to have him here. One thing to also note is we will be doing some kind of Q&A discussion pieces as we go through. So we're going to have several topics. As we hit those topics, we'll kind of talk through some of the material that's been presented. Joseph's going to be sharing his knowledge. And then we will want to periodically open it up and get questions, get feedback. Definitely want to hear from everybody. So this should be kind of a roundtable. The goal is to try and get through a majority of our content in about 45 minutes, but we've got plenty of time here if we want to continue the conversation beyond this. And then otherwise, if you do, as we're kind of going through, have specific questions, feel free to drop them in the chat just so that we've got a place so they don't get lost. And then when we kind of open up the floor periodically through the live stream, then we'll actually be able to kind of go back and parse some of those out. Some of those questions might get answered by Vidushi or myself. Some of them might get answered by other people on the call. This is going to be a collaborative event. I'm super excited. So I think I've talked long enough. I would like to kind of turn this over. We won't have time to do intros for everybody. I think if you do speak, maybe you could take a second to, if you haven't already said it, who you are and just kind of introduce yourself as we go. But let me turn it over to you, Joseph, and maybe you could give us a quick rundown of the story of Joseph. How did you get here, and why we're so excited to be able to talk and learn from you today?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the intro. So like Ron said, I was a member in the community before I started with Appsmith as a developer advocate. I had been freelancing for years and switched between a couple different platforms, and about 2.5 years ago, I found Appsmith, and at first I just got involved in the community. I was using it for freelancing and posted a couple tutorials, and then last year I was in there, participated in their Hacktoberfest event and won this awesome hoodie for some contributions, some blog posts and tutorials. And so, but yeah, I've just got a wide background, a lot of different tools. I love integrating different platforms, figuring out how to basically solve clients' problems. I love that discovery process, figuring out what they're currently doing, where the bottleneck is, and then how to provide a solution that either uses their existing tools, the things that they're used to that you can extend, or how to add another platform to that and integrate with it. So yeah, I guess what we really wanted to do is encourage everybody else that's out there that's kind of in the same boat that I was, say, 3 or 4 years ago when I first started getting involved with freelancing, no-code platforms, and like trying to get really ingrained in the community. Help them with tutorial content, Yeah, it's just I'm not really sure where to start because I've got so much on it. So
I know, I know.
We'll go to the questions.
Well, let's maybe we should just dive in then. Vahar, do you want to go ahead and let's kick us off? Give us the we've got some slides that are just placeholders for the conversation as we kind of go through it. So we can pull that up, but I think the first thing that we wanted to talk a little bit about was here we go. Great. Was kind of talking about kind of what we're trying to accomplish here. So as we said, this is really kind of a roundtable. So there's going to be a big discussion portion of this, and specifically for people that are consulting or providing solutions to their customers, and how using low code or no code in general can be done, but specifically, Appsmith, right? That's our expertise. That's where we come from. That's what we're trying to do here. There's all types of advantages there, and then part of that diving into not just as a consultant but as a freelancer, from a practical perspective, the business aspect, like how do you establish that credibility, how do you go out and start building up your client base and getting those leads. What does the ecosystem look like as you're kind of deciding what tool set that you should kind of standardize on? You don't want to use everything in the world. You want to get really good at a few things. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the tools that work well in conjunction with Appsmith that we like to use and we recommend. And then we'll have a broad discussion about kind of, finding where you fit in the community and how you can kind of go after those specific places so that you can become an expert. And that's where you're really going to see a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah. So I think
add there, Joseph.
Yeah, I think the next slide here, or one of the next slides, talks about establishing credibility as a freelancer when you're first starting out. And so when I first started trying to get traction on Upwork and Fiverr, there's tons of jobs posted on there. There's tons of people applying to the jobs. And when you don't have any kind of review history, no ratings or anything, you're really just going to have to do a couple things that you're going to lose some time on it. You might lose a little bit of money or have to lower your rate. But just to get the first couple reviews, I would suggest finding something that just seems really simple, straightforward. Look for a client that's communicating well what they need, something that you can just knock out of the park and get that first 5-star review. And that will make the second one so much easier, and the third. And then once you get a few, it becomes a lot easier to make that client feel comfortable to be ready to engage with you, to go further and commit, and either work with milestones and put some money down on the first phase of it, or as you get more experience, then you can get clients that are comfortable working hourly. You will really have a hard time getting hired at a good hourly rate without that background. But once they see, you've got a lot of reviews, they see those testimonials from other clients, and it shows the rate that you charge them or how much you made overall in the job. That makes it a lot easier to be able to establish that credibility with them. So a few tips for the first couple before you've actually been able to close the first deal and you're trying to get started on Upwork and Fiverr. If you have anybody like that you can help out locally, somebody from work or a friend that's got a business or whatever, bring your own client to those platforms. Upwork has a specific feature for that has lower fees. The fees are a little high on really all those types of platforms at first, but they scale down. With Upwork, I think the first $500 it charges like 20%, but then it goes down to 10 to 5. I think the lowest it gets is 5, which after you've earned so much with a particular client, to only have to pay 5% when the card fees would be 3, you're getting a lot for the 3%. Really, it's the contract negotiation, arbitration, the kind of the history of the project and what you agreed to. So there's a lot of value there. It just takes a while to get started. Another good thing to help you establish credibility is like having content somewhere besides wherever you're engaging with this potential client. So if it's Upwork, if it's Fiverr, if it's the forums on whichever platform, you need some other type of web presence to send them, whether it's like a professional website for your business, it could be a social media site, your LinkedIn, but just try to establish like either a brand. My previous company when I was freelancing, GreenFlux, I put everything under that name, but it doesn't have to be a business name. You don't have to have a logo. It's just one approach. It could just be your name. Get your name out there and your headshot, and like this is my blog and my content. This is what I specialize in. And if you can start producing that type of presence and that content slowly over time, then as that client like a year from now is searching, I'm looking for somebody that can integrate Appsmith with X, with some API. You want to have multiple results that's easy for them to find you. So the best thing you can do to establish credibility is just getting, multiple places out there that they can see your work or your reviews or blog or tutorial, anything, whatever type of content that is easy, for you to get started in or produce, or that highlights your skills. But there's no one right thing. There's tons of ways to approach that. Just let them be able to find something else to back up your skills, some portfolio or some other type of web presence.
So I've got a question for the group on this, actually, because that's one thing that I was kind of curious about. We have our own blog. We do have a writers program. We take posts from other people. We see a lot. People will post things about Appsmith on their blog or on Dev2 or Hashnode, other places. So I'm kind of curious for the folks on the call. Do you contribute or submit content online to help build your credibility, like Joseph's talking about? And if so, where is it? Like, if you work for somebody, is it on a company blog, or is it on your personal site? Is it social? That kind of stuff.
This is John speaking. I think, kind of like Joseph, I was pretty active on the other low-code community sites that I use, and that's probably been the biggest asset to me when I submit proposals for new jobs, is just being able to link that profile. It's that's the kind of credibility, short of having other reviews on say Upwork or Fiverr, and I think it wins me quite a bit of work.
Okay, so that's a good point. So contributions to kind of like those community sites, those community portals, and then using the profiles there, kind of almost like a mini CV or something. Am I understanding that correct? It's like an easy way to share what you've kind of done.
Yeah, that's right. I'll usually, at the bottom of my proposals, include a little references section with whatever might be relevant to that project, but almost always it'll be my community program or community profile for the particular platform.
That's awesome. Super helpful. Anybody else? Thanks, John. Anybody else have things that they contribute to or use to build their personal brand and establish credibility online?
This is Robert. Coincidentally, I don't, but I thought I'd also add to John's point that we both work closely together, and you can see the difference that actually does make. Where he can bid on jobs, he's more likely to win those jobs. A job that I know I can do, that I have experience and background in doing, that I know I can do successfully. He could win those jobs that I can't, because I don't have that same community presence. So you can definitely see that there is an absolute value to that, something that I know that I want to and need to start doing myself.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And I wanted to add to that from the community side, getting involved just by asking questions can help a lot too. Because if you are struggling with something, if you can't find the answer in the docs, or if you think something's a little, it's not as clear in the platform as it could be, it helps make the platform better by bringing that stuff to light, by like helping us see where those pain points are. And then after you've engaged enough and asked enough questions, you start to learn things. To me anyway, it just naturally evolved into your answering questions soon. picked up enough that you'll see a question and you're like, oh, I can get this one. And then before long, you're making a name for yourself as being one of the people in the community that people go to for help, for answers. And it doesn't even have to be a profile or a separate site or anything that you have to build to have that web presence. Just being active on the forums can really help out with that credibility, and can help you, meet the next client, or just it might answer the question that client's looking for. They were stuck on something and they say, oh, hey, this is the guy that wrote this tip, this tutorial that I'm using. Maybe I should reach out to him when I need help,
That's a good point. So that's kind of feeding into that idea of a community, not just from like the open source sense of, hey, give me a pull request, but from the, asking questions, interacting, helping other people. And then, like, for example, everyone on the call, there's some folks from Appsmith here. I obviously recognize them, but Muez popped in. I know exactly who that was because of his interactions with the Appsmith community, right? He's made himself visible. I guess that's a pretty big thing to do. And I think that also speaks to the importance of finding that, of kind of finding that place where you fit and those tools that you're going to focus on, versus kind of being a hummingbird that goes to every single flower. Like having some specific places where you're known definitely probably is helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that leads into the next topic pretty well. Does anyone else have anything to add on the first one here before we switch? Okay. So I think something else that can help with that web presence that ties into helping you find, either helping you find leads or helping them find you, basically, just getting your name out there, and then attaching something else with that name. You specialize in integrating low-code platforms with e-commerce APIs. That's something that I got pretty involved in while I was freelancing. Or it could be that you've got a background in, a certain industry. If you did something else before you were freelancing and you've got a lot of knowledge in engineering or manufacturing or something, like I had a background there. And so when I saw jobs where they needed to build an app around something that had a lot of engineering measurements, something that most people wouldn't be really familiar with, and able to jump in and do like the unit conversions of, different properties for pH and whatnot. So if there's some area that you have a good background in, try to tie that into the type of work you're looking for or how you market yourself so that people can find you.
Awesome. Yeah. So what does that look like, Joseph? Like for you, for example, like how did you do that? Was that like a conscious thing? Did you kind of fall into it? Like how did you end up becoming an expert in this field?
Yeah, so there were two, and the examples I used there weren't random. They were both mine. So the e-commerce one I fell into. I had no intention of trying to become an expert in different e-commerce platforms or API integrations. But one random job that looked like a good one that I could apply to, it happened to integrate with the Shopify API, and they already had data in a Google Sheet. The previous developer had written a Google Apps script to download Shopify data and put it in a spreadsheet, and then they wanted to build an app on top of that. And so I did that one, and it came out well. They loved it. They recommended me to somebody else. Then it grew, and there was this co-op. It was a group of farms using a Shopify platform for like all the members of the co-op to have a single store. And so they had to distribute out all the orders. And then there was other co-ops in other parts of the country doing something similar. And so it just grew and grew. And I had multiple copies of this same one app integrated with different Shopify backends for different stores. And when you can focus on one area like that, it really reduces the work on the next one and the next one. You get really familiar with the API, and you've already got everything written to where you can just copy an app that you've already built and just change a few things for the next use case. So So that's one that one I just fell into. The other one, anything to do with engineering or manufacturing. You know, I've got a strong background there from previous jobs. I was a nuclear electronics tech in the Navy, and before that, I was a machinist. And so I would look for certain keywords, like on Upwork, you can create like a combined like Boolean search with, you know, parentheses and or. And so I do a bunch of keywords, like a bunch of manufacturing terms. I'm looking for this or this or this or this, parentheses, and API or spreadsheet or something, right? So there'd be like a kind of topic area that I was looking for, and then like the technical side, API or an app or a spreadsheet or just some other kind of keyword like that. And I would just scroll through every morning. It's like reading the news. I would just see if there was anything new that came up that hit that particular search, because you might come up with the perfect search that's fits your skill set and the type of jobs you want, and then you run it and there's nothing. Save it anyway. You can save the search and then keep running it every day. So you can specifically target a area that you want to be an expert in because you've got the background, or it may just be that you like take a you know, random job. This seems like something that you could build in Appsmith, but you're new to whatever API it is. And so you end up integrating with their Stripe API, and you're like, oh, hey, this isn't so hard, and apply to another Stripe one. You know, so it might just happen. You might find something that you pick up quick and you want to make that yours, the area that you specialize in, or you can draw from existing experience. And so, yeah, I've done both.
Awesome. Super helpful. That's always good to hear. I think particularly here with the folks we're talking about, I know some people here are more established and some are not, and hopefully some of the people watching later will find that useful too. In the interest of time, do you mind if we go to the next topic? I think it's gonna really fit in here once you're starting to find work, and you're starting to find your niche and figure out where you are. Like, how would you do this? Like, I mean, you're building an entire business. Like, so are there specific things, Joseph, that you would look for in terms of an Appsmith specific project? Like, if there's an existing backend, is there something UI? Is it a general app where you're going to be providing recommendation on the backend? Like, seeing how Appsmith fits in the solution, what are the things that you start to look for?
So when I was still freelancing and using Appsmith, I would look at the use case, the job description, you know, to figure out what it is that they're trying to connect or accomplish. What are they automating, or what two data sources need to link up? And Appsmith is really flexible, can connect to tons of different data sources and APIs. So I had a similar experience with other platforms. I was freelancing at first using FileMaker Pro, and then AppSheet and a few other platforms. And I would see jobs posted that I knew that I could do it in whatever platform I was using at the time, whether it was FileMaker, AppSheet, or Appsmith, but the clients hadn't heard of it. And so before I could get to selling them on my skills or my services, I would have to, introduce them to the platform, make sure that they're aware of what this tool is, what it's capable of, you know, what it's used for, what it costs. So there can be a ton of questions there before you even get to discussing your work and your skills in that platform. But then I found that it would just continue to grow. Like, at first there wouldn't be any jobs posted when I was doing jobs looking for work with AppSheet. I wouldn't find anybody posting a job for it. They were posted a job about wanting an app built on Google Sheets, you know, and they hadn't heard of AppSheet. And so at the beginning, I would have to try to encourage them, you know, try to explain what the platform is, say, hey, this would be a good solution, you know, here's the site, check it out. And then if they were on board with that, then we could talk about, the contract, the proposal, how many hours, whatnot. But that totally changed. It got to a point where there were tons of jobs being posted. And again, I set up those searches that I would save. And so here, another tip is on Upwork, you can take a saved search and turn that into an RSS feed, and then use whatever RSS tool that you want to set up, daily notifications. So I didn't have to run the search every day and then switch to the next search. I just got a feed and I saved all the different searches. And so every morning, RSS feed of jobs. Anyway, I'm not sure, is that what you were asking, or are you talking more about building your own business as an agency?
Well, I think that's definitely part of it. And I hadn't thought about it from that perspective of like, not just looking for people looking for Appsmith, although that is growing, but looking for people who could use it. But what about everybody else? So like, I'd kind of like to open it up and see for the other people on the call, like, what are the things that you're looking for when you're out looking for jobs, or you're talking to potential customers and prospects? What are the things that you look for, and what are the things that you're looking for specifically for something like Appsmith as part of your tool set? We have a bit of a shy group. Anybody want to chime in about how you are looking for those jobs, specifically for how they might fit in with a low-code tool?
Sorry. No, I think when I'm looking around on, say, Upwork, and I'm looking for a job that might work, it's somebody who, for me, it's clear that they're not exactly sure what route they want to take, but there's, again, most of my background is in AppSheet. So if I'm looking for something like that, I'm looking for somebody who's already using a bunch of Google platforms, or has a Google workspace, something like that. You're already using those tools. Here's something that can tie it all in. So now too, though, starting to use Appsmith and wanting to get more into learning that platform and trying to utilize that. What I'm looking for is somebody who might have an integration 2, 3 that they want to tie all in, but they're looking at using something like Zapier or Integromat, something that I've looked at before that I'm like, oh, that's complicated. I know how we can tie it all together with one thing. And that would be something that I'm looking for. So somebody who just they don't know what they want to use. They just know how they want to accomplish it.
So it sounds to me, Robert, if I'm correct, and everyone else, please feel free to chime in here, that a lot of times it sounds like the work of consulting kind of starts before you start consulting, right? Like you're trying to look and bring your knowledge of what's possible and what tools exist out there that they don't even know to ask about, and bring those to bear so that the solution that you can provide is something they weren't even aware could be done. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, that's right. One client I had, for example, needed a whole database and like WordPress website, PHP, all that sort of thing. But their entire system could be handled using AppSheet at that time, and so that was one of the first jobs that I was actually able to win on my own. And yeah, it was I didn't even know that this was a possibility. Sometimes it is a matter of educating people that there are other options other than just that one thing that and I think that helps. That said, I still have a lot to learn myself on other things to look for, and I'm lucky to work with people who know that kind of thing, so that I can get some tips there as well. And events like this are really helpful for me as well.
That's fantastic.
I also want to say that I agree with Robert completely, because even right now, if you go over at Upwork and search for Appsmith in the search bar, I doubt you will find some jobs more than 2, 3, or 4. I doubt you will find a lot of jobs for Appsmith. But if you do Google if you do search for, let's say, Google Sheet or something, or Retool or whatever, you will find a lot of jobs. And in those cases, it is a good idea to apply for those jobs, bid on those jobs, and then tell the client that, okay, this is a tool that works better, or this, I have had some clients where they had some data in Google Sheets, and they wanted a visually beautiful way to go through that data within Google Sheet. But I suggested them, okay, let's look into Appsmith, and they are generally surprised in a good way that, you know, this is a much better and relatively easy to use method of going through data that is that they don't have to host anywhere else, you know, instead of Google Sheets.
So, US, I'm kind of curious. You said something there that I thought was very interesting. I think searching not only for the problems, but also for those other compatible technologies like Google Sheets is very, very clever. But you also mentioned, you know, searching for other low code, no code tools. Is that, and you're kind of taking that, you know, those may be brands other people may be aware of, which might be a good fit, may not be a good fit. Is that something that you think that there's more value for you looking for those integrations and the backend stuff like the Google Sheets type work, or looking for things where people know they want some type of low code like a retool, and you're able to offer them something that might be a little better? Do you think that either one of those is more useful or valuable to you in your business, or do you think that it's just kind of you're just doing all of the things and seeing what works?
To be honest, if a client is you know, has already decided that they want something built in Retool, I can't really change their mind.
Of course.
But
you got to give the customer what they want.
If in the title of the job they mention that, okay, I want something built in something like Retool, I can guess that, okay, they're not sure. I can give them a couple of suggestions. I can tell them you can make this in Appsmith or AppSheet or whatever. Then it works out for me as well, because I can choose my own platform where I'm working. So it's convenient for me, and ultimately it works out for the client as well, because they get a product that, you know, works out for them.
So one last question here before we kind of move on. I'm kind of wondering from the folks on the call, are there other programs out there where there might be some type of like the ability to resell, or do you ever consider like kind of creating your own system using some of those other tools that you then become kind of like the face of your own product? Like, is reselling something you guys are thinking about or talking about with anyone in the tech space?
Yeah, this is John. We've done something sort of like that on AppSheet, but over time, really that sort of endeavor is only going to be as successful as the platform allows it to be. So in this case, Google would really have to support that and allow the creators to come up with, say, a reusable template, allow people to use it, but then license it somehow. That doesn't exist over there. And really with a lot of these low-code platforms, when you go to share your, say, solution to say, a client, you're really giving them the whole thing.
Got it. So it sounds almost
I would like to add something there.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is totally true. I feel that, for example, the platform that I use, that is AppSheet, it's really difficult to monetize in some ways some product that you already did, unless that you do, as Joseph mentioned, that several jobs are similar, so you can use the same basic structure you built at the start. But would be really nice if Appsmith can or allows developers somehow protect your product, this one thing that you create, and you can maybe sell it in the future or earn money with the time that you invested building this. So that would be awesome.
So just that's an interesting idea. I know I've seen like in WordPress or things like that, you know, people might sell themes or they might sell modules. I know that like in Figma, for example, if you're going to look at kind of community templates, there are some that are commercial that you would pay for a license. is that kind of like what you're talking about? Are there specific examples of things that would be useful to you guys to kind of really make a place your home where you could monetize your work?
Yes, actually, something like that, like the templates that Figma uses. Maybe some store that you could have where there are a bunch of templates from developers, and if people like one of those, they can just purchase. That is one approach that would be useful, I think. And the other is kind of a weakness that I see in this other platform is that, as Jonathan said, when you deliver your product, you are giving everything to them. So you are sitting all control, or there are actually no policies to protect enough this development. So it's as easy as copying and using. There is no way to protect this in a real way to protect your work. I see that it doesn't exist. It's just copying the app and reusing. And sometimes those apps are, I don't know, 200, 300, 400 hours of work, and these belong to this client. And even by weaknesses in their internal processes, they can just give this app that they pay for. So I don't think this is good. Would be very nice if your platform offer a way for clients to protect their products and developers to monetize.
Very interesting. And other thoughts on this? I know somebody else was chiming in.
I just want to say that, I mean, Appsmith, there is no built-in way to protect your, let's say I create a SaaS product inside Appsmith. I agree that there is no built-in way to protect it, but I think we can use third-party tools like Supabase or Firebase authentication to, protect the app manually. I think it is possible. I haven't done it yet, but I think it should be possible.
Okay, yeah. And so let me ask you this too. I know we're spending a lot of time on this topic, but this is actually a really great conversation. It sounds to me like there's definitely an interest in like trying to build some of your, potentially, right? Like there's not a way to do this currently, but potentially build some of your own IP on top of a platform, whether it's Appsmith or some other. And of course, as everyone has said, once you kind of turn that over to a customer and then they own it, which, if they've paid for that work, you give them that work, just like if you give them actual code, they can import and export the apps there. Has anyone ever thought about or considered, creating solutions or things where you don't actually turn it over, like where you would actually be maybe charging less because you're not giving them the code, but you're actually hosting it on their behalf. So you would still have control of that app, and you would be able to, maybe create other versions and customize them for people. And so then you would kind of almost like be doing your own thing. I mean, in theory, there's nothing stopping you from doing that on any platform today, right? But I'm kind of just wondering, is that something that anyone here has thought about or has tried? Is this just like a crazy out of left field idea? I don't know.
Yeah, we've tried stuff like that. Really, the kind of, we're going to build this for you. You're going to take less risk to your business. You're not going to be paying these high developer rates. Instead, we're taking some of that risk. But at the end of it, we own the product and you're going to be licensing it from us. So it changes the dynamic quite a bit in some good ways. It puts the onus on us as developers to build something good that they're going to want to use. But the thing that's always made it not so great of an option for us is just that kind of upfront risk. It can be a significant amount of work to build something even simple. Right. And if the client doesn't have any stake in the game, if you're truly doing it for them for free, they can just walk away at the end of it, and you're left with this thing that's so custom to them. That's, yeah. But I like the model.
So let me ask you this, Jonathan. If you, in that particular model, would it be? It sounds like part of the problem. Obviously, there's risk, but in business, any advantage you get is going to come with some risk. But it sounds like part of the problem also could be solved if it was maybe easier to reuse bits of the work or to build things in reusable ways. So it's like, oh, I'm building out this custom application for this person, but 90% of it can be reused easily, or bits and pieces of it could be pulled and put together. You know, we've got some stuff coming possibly at some point in the future that would make things like that easier. Would that, do you feel like that would make it less risky and more interesting to do something like that?
Well, my experience with low code in particular is the reusable piece hasn't been so beneficial. It's already so quick to kind of churn out simple things, and also each client just they're coming to a custom solution because their process is so unique. There isn't anything on the market that works quite like how they want it. So I haven't found a lot of success in, you know, boilerplate kind of starting apps that might save you 3 or 4 hours on the outset of a project. Absolutely. But when you actually get into the meat of the problem, stuff gets pretty custom pretty fast, I've found. And I guess hopefully that answers that question.
No, that's great. That's great.
To add to John's point as well, I think one thing that we found is, like you said, people are looking for that custom made, this is what I want. And if they, like you said, if they wanted just a general product, they would go and get a general product. So at what point do you stop customizing what they want so that you have something general enough that multiple people can use that and you can reuse it on multiple clients? Likewise, there's platforms out there that people can just put up this product that they've made for like document generation, stuff like that. What's that site? AppSumo. So it's really easy for people to just put that stuff up, but it's such a saturated market at some point. If you're going to try and sell something as a service, you either have to have a really good idea that nobody else has had, or you have to have an idea that everybody else has had, but you know how to do it better. And that's such a hard thing to do. And how much time and money are you willing to spend to take that risk? And I suppose at some point you do just have to take that risk, because otherwise somebody else might. And if it's successful, well, you lost out, right? But how do you know when that risk is worth it?
Yeah, and I think that also comes back around to what Joseph was talking about earlier, with like identifying the niche that you fit into, and you know, kind of finding your spot in terms of your skill set. It looks like we're going along with time. I apologize for kind of like digging in there, but that was just some really, really great ideas and thoughts, and I loved hearing back from everybody on that. Maybe we could shoot forward and go on to the next section. Actually, let's go ahead and go to the one after this. So in the interest of time, I think that we covered some of those kind of things.
What's the next one? Yes.
There we go. Yeah. So I think this is actually fits in perfectly with what we're talking about, because if you're thinking about providing solutions, maybe because somebody already has something they want to use, what fits well with Appsmith? If you're thinking about trying to come up with a custom solution, if you're looking for your niche, what tools should you kind of standardize on? Like, what does your tool set look like? If you even want to try and do something crazy with, you know, trying to build your own IP or reselling in some way, you're going to need to narrow down. So maybe you could kick us off here, Joseph, on just the whole topic. That how do you do this? There's like 50 million tools out there. How do you figure out what to use?
Well, I definitely believe in using the right tool for the job, and sometimes that means 2 tools. You know, there might not be one that does everything, or maybe the one that does everything doesn't do the API integration part well, or it doesn't have the best UI or whatever. So the first thing is just figuring out what the overall requirements of the project are, and definitely make sure you figure out all those last things that they want to, what's that last mile or that last thing that you might collect all the data and have the app to generate reports and whatnot. And you've got everything up to the last step. And then you find out at the end, oh, and we need to be able to generate this as a PDF and send it as an email to 20 different people at the end of the day or something. That if you build everything else first and then you get to that part, you might realize the platform you're in, doesn't have the tools that you need to do it directly in the one platform. So figure out all those different pieces, the components, the parts of the requirement that are going to point you to different tools so that you can pick the right one up front. But then once it comes to this is the tool I'm going to use or the type of tool, and now which document generation thing am I going to use, or which email sending API, or what solution are you going to use, then it can be a ton of different factors. There's the features, there's the cost and what's your client's budget. They may only want to pay for you to develop the one thing and pay a fixed cost and get their solution and be done with it. And they don't want any type of recurring monthly fees. I would get that a lot when I was freelancing, that they're okay with whatever the cost is, but they didn't want to get locked in or have to pay for some extra third-party thing that's a monthly fee. So I can't stress that enough. Figure out all that stuff up front for you so that you can integrate it, and for the client so they know that the cost and that there's no surprises at the end. But then when there's different tools, and if you've got multiple options of which one you could use, and the cost isn't an issue, if everything else is equal, then I would look at like documentation, support, the community that each platform has. Which one is going to be easier to find an answer when you're stuck on something, or which one seems more like it's actively being developed. So that's kind of high level, but it's there's so many different platforms Appsmith can integrate with. So if you narrowed it down to which one to use for a back end or which one for the document generation part, then we can get more specific. One other kind of high level thing to group them by would be self-hosting. So a lot of our customers self-host. And so when you're looking for a platform to integrate with, to say do workflow automations, we don't have that natively in Appsmith, but you can easily add it through N8N or Make, Integromat, Zapier, whatever. But because a lot of our clients want to self-host, if you build the app and you've got it self-contained in their network and they've got a firewall, and then there's this one thing you need to add, well, you're not going to be able to talk to Zapier if they've got a firewall and they don't want to expose that, or if their security policy doesn't allow it, the outside connections. So you'll have to use a solution that's also self-hosted like N8N. So I think our default, just with us being a self-hosting first and open source platform, then that's going to be our default, looking for that extra, third party to integrate with. Anything that can be self-hosted, that's open source and has a free version, it's going to align with everything else the client already wants, because, they're using Appsmith to begin with. So then it can get way more specific depending on the use case and the exact problem you're solving. So that's just the high level.
Yeah, and I would imagine too, like you mentioned about the understanding like the pricing and how, what the cost to your customer are going to be, and making sure there are no unpleasant surprises down the road. I would also imagine that other tools that are open source and or self-hosted are probably going to have compatible or similar pricing models that make sense. I'm wondering, for the folks on the call, like, do you have like a go-to set of tools that you like to use? Are there some specific, automation tools or other low-code tools or databases, backends, things like that you specifically use on a regular basis that are kind of like your go-tos?
Well, being primarily AppSheet developers, there's your common tool set, pretty much anything in the Google ecosystem. Definitely Sheets, and then as a result, AppScript. I think one thing that we've done that maybe a lot of other of the AppSheet developers don't do is we really push against the use of N8N or Zapier or Integromat Make. Instead, we prefer to do our integrations there just through, Google Apps Script. Mostly for kind of what Joseph mentioned. We just don't want, it's an additional service. You're going to have to pay for it. It's not necessary.
Right.
Other than that, going out to some more of our enterprise clients, definitely things like SQL Server for a database. And we get into a lot of the AWS architecture. So AWS Lambda, AWS Cognito for authentication. That's probably the majority of what we're doing. Yeah.
Awesome. Good to hear. Other folks want to talk about some of the tools they like to use or that they end up using?
Oh, I almost always end up using Supabase because it's really easy to set up and it works very easily with Appsmith, and it has a lot of good features. It offers me authentication and database and functions as well. So I can do a lot of things with Supabase.
That would be my new go-to. Like I'm just getting familiar with it, but the auth was really easy to set up. I just built an Appsmith app in the last few days that has you can set like form sign up, so that it's not OAuth through Google or GitHub. It's just you input everything in a form, send it off, it creates an account. You get a link to verify it that brings you back to the app and gives you a token. I can have somebody sign up through the app or send them a magic link or a forgot password link. And all of that stuff was amazingly easy to set up in Supabase. I'm familiar with like the OAuth flow, but it's usually following the API docs and just doing the way that Shopify or whichever API you're integrating with. It's like you're only doing half of it, and the other part's already there and built, and you're interacting with it. But it's really cool doing it with Supabase, where you're coding the other half of the system that you're authenticating against, and it's super easy to set up if you've got a little bit of familiarity with the OAuth flow, and it really extends like the how you can distribute your app and how users log in and how you can control them in groups and permissions for the row levels. Supabase handles all that for you so that you don't have to try to, it's not extra logic that you would have to write in Appsmith. You can just define policies for the tables. These users have these access permissions for each row. Wow. So yeah, still learning it, but it's awesome.
Yeah, you should also look into its functions and database functions. The edge functions and database functions too. Both of these are two different things, but they do essentially the same thing. One is just for a database, you write it in raw Postgres SQL language, and the other is you write it in TypeScript. But both allow you to create very complicated backend tasks, and you do not have to handle them from your front end, which in this case is Appsmith. You can let the backend handle that on its own.
Very powerful. Yeah. Looking at the time, it looks like we're getting pretty close here. We're coming up. So I wanted to just see if there, in these last few minutes that we've got, are there other topics, other questions, other things you want to share, other things you want to ask Joseph while we've got him here? We've got a little bit of time left, but I want to make sure we got everybody covered here. So anybody have anything else they want to bring up or share or ask?
Well, before doing the question, I just want to thank Joseph because he kind of have a nature of contributing. I can see this in this in this event today. He's also kind of a legend in the AppSheet community. I can see this happening here in Appsmith also. So thank you very much for all your contributions. My question would be more oriented based on your background in AppSheet and now in Appsmith. How you think these two tools can be combined to obtain some kind of result? Can these two be combined in some way to develop products or give solutions to clients?
So there's a little bit of overlap in their functionality, which would make combining them kind of redundant. So I'm going to look at it from the features that are unique to each one. Why would you need to combine them? All right. So and the big one that stands out to me that AppSheet has that we don't have with Appsmith is client side, like offline record creation. You could do it with maybe JavaScript and storing values or whatever, and then write some logic that when a database is back online or something, that you would update it. But the app still has to be connected to a server, right? Our Appsmith apps connect to a server that could be localized to your network and doesn't have an outside connection, but there's still at least that server client setup. Whereas AppSheet can download a copy of the app to a mobile device and completely run offline. It can create records and queue up whatever CRUD operations, and then when the network connection comes back, that device starts syncing up those changes to the server. So if I was looking where would you combine and what would be a good use case, probably something that's going to use that offline record creation and then be able to maybe send that data to a Google Sheet or something, or some other backend when a connection is there. And then you could have like an admin panel or something that is more heavy on the API integrations. It's actually why I ended up, looking for, I had done a lot of third-party integrations with AppSheet, and the platform could do most of what I needed, but then I'd have to integrate with this API or this one. And so there's a lot of API integrations, and that's one of the weaknesses to me with AppSheet. So they're better with the offline record creation, but the API integrations aren't as great. And so maybe that's where the handoff would be. You could have a system where you're using that mobile app in AppSheet with offline record creation, save the data somewhere, and then that's where you would pick it up with Appsmith. That's going to be better for the API integrations, for any complex data transformations. You can write pure JavaScript instead of using the no-code logic and trying to transform data that way. So there could definitely be a good interaction there, just playing off of the strengths of each platform.
Makes sense. Thank you very much, Joseph.
Yeah, thanks.
Great question. Other questions? We've got a few minutes left.
I got an actual, excuse me, an Appsmith specific question. Just talk about in trying to integrate, say, AppSheet and Appsmith. I know AppSheet has some automations that happen even if you're not using the app. Does Appsmith have anything like that? If I set up something to happen on an interval, can it run just in the background? You don't have the app open, and you come back. Something is even as simple as a counter counting up 1 to 10,000. You close it, come back, and it's up from 3,000 to 9,000 kind of thing, right? Does Appsmith have anything like that just runs in the background, in the back end, when you don't have the app open?
Not on the back end. We do have the ability to use JavaScript and set an interval, run a function and set an interval. So that would be on the client side. They don't have to interact. They wouldn't have to click anything. You could just have a function run on page load, set an interval, and maybe keep pulling a database and updating a dashboard or something like that. But as far as it running completely in the background on the server side without a client device open, we don't support that today, but we do have a feature request that's open for it for server side cron jobs and invoking actions with a webhook. So the idea is out there. We got a feature request open on it. I don't have an ETA on it, but in the past we've done similar things using N8N. So that would be the server that's going to store the action or whatever it is that you want to run on a schedule. But then you could invoke it manually as well with, say, a webhook API call from Appsmith. So the two are connected, but as far as the scheduling part, it would only be an N8N or Make, Integromat, something like that.
Fair enough.
So,
in terms of in terms of the user model, maybe another kind of weakness of AppSheet, but massive strength of Appsmith that I've noticed is AppSheet really, the user model, you're paying for every user, so you could never build a community platform. You could never build, or you could build, but you pay a lot for apps where you have a large volume of, say, data consumers. So I guess what's Appsmith's approach, kind of short-term, long-term, for how they handle user access? Is there anything that our clients should know in terms of their user base and what that might end up costing them?
Yeah, so there's kind of two approaches. One is, if you're using the community edition, particularly if you're self-hosting, then it's just whatever your self-hosting costs are for serving that. The other is if you're actually going to be using the business edition, and that the way the business edition works is actually it does have a user license, but you can determine which license the user has. So either basically it's a flat fee license where someone's just in there using as much as they can, or there is a usage-based license as well. So if someone is a more casual user or isn't interacting that often, you can actually use the user-based model, and it's calculated per hour of usage. I think it's like 20 cents, 40 cents. You'd have to look on the website, I'm sorry. And it caps out at the same price as a full user. So you're never going to go above that. So that's kind of the balance that we've struck with regards to being able to make sure that we have per user licensing, but it also has a user-based, a usage-based component so that it can scale. So it's not going to be like paying a full license for somebody who's only using things periodically. There is another question that's kind of embedded there. I'm not sure if this is exactly what you meant, which would be around, the intention for a lot of these tools, especially in the space where it's for internal tools, which typically assumes some type of authentication. There's a difference when it's going to be something that's more like public facing or has anonymous usage. That's something that's still a little bit unknown, like if there's going to be some change there, how that might affect things in the future. But from the bottom line is that if you're using the community version, especially if it's self-hosted, there really aren't any limits there. And the only time there would be limits would be if you needed the business edition to get some of those additional features. But even then, because we have this unique hybrid model, the pricing is still going to be scaled to how much a person's using it versus just, I got to pay just to get a ticket to the show. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, that helps a ton. The big win there is, a practical example. We build apps all the time where somebody uses it, for 10 hours a day. It's their entire workflow. It's built on, say, AppSheet app, and you're getting your value. Definitely happy to pay, whatever that user fee is. But then you might have that one user who uses it for 1 hour a month, going in and just checking a number, and you pay the same for those. And there's usually a lot more of those. Yeah. So your model there of kind of per usage pricing is a massive win.
Well, and that I cannot tell you how much discussion and thought and effort has gone into that, because that's definitely a problem we've all heard, we've all experienced. Like every single person here has run up into that at one time or another. If you haven't already, check out, we just recently relaunched our website. We're going to be making a bigger announcement about sort of how we did it and why we did it coming up. But if you haven't checked it out, go check out appsmith.com, check out the new site. It's pretty cool, super fast, Next.js, Vercel, all the fun things. But on the pricing page, we actually now have a calculator. So you can actually go in and put how many kind of like daily or power users you have versus how many remote or intermittent users. And it will actually tell you the difference and kind of give you an estimate of what that would look like. And again, the key thing to keep in mind there is that, which I think it's pretty incredible that we as a company decided to do this. I'm a huge fan of it. But we also cap the usage piece, right? So like if you have somebody that's on the usage-based license and they, for some reason, get really busy or they decide to use it or they start to make their own apps all of a sudden, it's not going to be like an Amazon thing where they have usage base and it just overnight can just explode. It hits that cap and that's where it stops, which I think is the right thing to do for the customer. I'm pretty impressed that we would try and take that effort on. So hopefully that helps as well.
Yes, thank you.
Ron, I have a question. A while back, it was mentioned in the server that you guys were working on a developers program. So is there an update on that?
So actually, we've actually had a lot of discussions about that. We recently had a company offsite. This was one of the topics that came up. And so one of the things that one of the reasons we were excited to have this live stream, and to be quite honest, one of the reasons I've been trying to ask so many questions is trying to get some general feedback from you guys as not only developers, but also as freelancers, as kind of experts in the community. So there's definitely an interest. If, you know, just to be completely honest, there isn't anything set in stone right now today, but everyone on the DevRel team, you know, Joseph, Fiduci, Bahar, and I, Confidence, who's out this week, or he would probably have been here as well, are definitely focused on trying to put something together. The key is we want to make sure that it's well thought out, and it's something that is going to make sense, and it's something that is going to work well for our developers and for the experts that are using our platform. So we'd rather take a little bit more time and do it right than try and rush something out that doesn't actually help you. It's got to be advantageous. But I've got, I'm dropping my email into the chat. It's ron@appsmith.com. Shoot me an email. I would love any thoughts. What do you want to see from a developer program, from an expert program? Like we've been talking about training and certification. We've been talking about having some more of these roundtables. We've talked about, you know, possibly having like a profile, like we mentioned earlier, so that you can showcase your skills, so that you can network with other people. Like there are a lot of options on the table, but please reach out to me. Let me know what would be useful to you and what would actually help you be more successful using Appsmith in your business. Would love to hear it.
Well, thanks everyone. We appreciate you guys showing up. This was really useful for us to get this kind of feedback. Like Ron said, if you got any more, feel free to email him or me. I'm Joseph at Appsmith.
You can find us on Discord too. So, you know, we can chat there.
But we will definitely be doing more community events, probably more focused with freelancers if there's interest on it as well. We just need to know what you guys are interested in and, you know, hear the feedback so we can steer in the right direction to make it as beneficial for you guys as we can.
Well, thank you, Joseph. I know it was mentioned earlier that you're a legend, especially in this space. We all know that here, so I'm glad other people appreciate it, but thanks for taking the time and putting this together and sharing your knowledge so freely with everybody. I think it's helpful.
Yeah, glad to do it.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everyone.